message this evening, please open your Bibles to the 4th chapter of the book of James in the New Testament, James chapter 4. And our text is in verses 13 through 17. And tonight I'm going to be preaching out of the New International Version. Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast and brag. All such boasting is evil. Anyone then who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it sins. You know, everyone here tonight probably has plans of some kind. Perhaps you've planned a trip or a vacation that's coming up soon. Or maybe you have a planned doctor's visit that's coming in the coming days or weeks. Perhaps you're already making plans for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. Or maybe you're planning ahead for your retirement. There's something about making plans and fulfilling our plans that not only gives us a sense of satisfaction, it gives us a sense of organization and orderliness about our lives. You might even say it gives us a sense of pride to carry out our plans, which can easily lead into one of the greatest temptations that we need to guard against in the Christian life, and that is the danger of self-sufficiency, or living our lives independently of God. Where does God fit into your plans? Do you ever consider God's will for your life when you're making your plans? Would you be willing to change your plans if you knew that your plans contradicted the will of God? These are some things we want to consider in tonight's message. Here in our scripture text, James is warning us about 3 common mistakes that people often commit when they're making their plans in life. Let's look at these mistakes. Mistake number 1 is planning our future without God. Planning our future without God. Listen again to what James says there in verse 13. He says, now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. You notice James begins this 13th verse with these 2 words. Now listen. The only other time these 2 words are used together in the New Testament is down in chapter 5, verse 1 of James. And it is a very emphatic statement. Now listen. It's meant to grab our attention. Today we might say it this way. Listen carefully to what I'm about to say to you. Or listen up. I'm about to tell you something really important. So what James is saying here is, listen up, all you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. At the time James wrote this letter, the world was growing very rapidly. During those days, they had constructed the Roman road and the Appian Way, which were like 2 superhighways in the ancient world. And those roads that went pretty well all across the known world at that time allowed there to be much broader travel. It opened the way for people to go places that they had never been to before. And during the days of James, new cities were cropping up all across the world. Business and commerce was booming. It was a time when a man could profit greatly, economically, if he was willing to travel. And this is exactly what a lot of people were doing in those days, including many Christians that James is addressing here in this letter. And you know what James describes here in verse 13 is a model of perfect planning, at least from a worldly standpoint. You notice the plan is constructed today or tomorrow. The place is chosen. We will go to this or to that city. The period is calculated. We will spend a year there. The purpose is considered and carry on business. And then the profit is computed and make money. Now, everything about this plan is perfect except for one huge mistake. This man left God out of his plans. He didn't seek God's will in his plan. He didn't ask for God's guidance and direction in making this plan. He didn't even mention God in his plan. Now here is that self-sufficiency that I referred to a while ago. This is the danger of making our plans without God, or planning our future without God. We can become very self-sufficient and independent from God. Now I want to make it clear that the Bible does not teach us that it's wrong to make plans. You won't find that anywhere in the Scriptures where it condemns the making of plans. In fact, in Luke 14, verse 28, Jesus said, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? In other words, what Jesus is saying is a project like that takes planning. Jesus goes on to say in verse 31 of Luke 14, or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Will he not first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? Again, he's talking about the necessity of making a plan. And so the point Jesus is making is that it's not wrong for us to make plans. But as Christians, we do need to understand it is very wrong, it is sinfully wrong to make plans without including God at all in our plans. You know why we often make plans without including God? One reason is because of fear. We fear that God may delay or postpone or even cancel our plans if we bring our plans before Him in prayer. So we don't ask. We don't seek His guidance because we're afraid that He'll do something different than what we want to do. Another reason we often don't include God in our plans is because we're pursuing something sinful or something selfish that we don't want God interfering with. Another reason we don't include God in our plans is a matter of pride. We think we know more than God when it comes to deciding what's best for our lives. And I'm asking how many of you have learned this lesson in life, that any time you make a plan that completely leaves God out of the picture, that plan is doomed from the get-go. Have you learned that? Anytime we make plans, especially critical life plans, planning who we're going to marry, planning what we're going to do for a living, when we leave God out of those plans, the plan is doomed to fail. Proverbs 21 verse 30 says there's no wisdom, no insight, and no plan that can succeed against the Lord. And so as you consider plans that maybe you have made for the coming weeks and months, Have you made the mistake of leaving God out of your plans? There's a second mistake we have to guard against, and that is presuming to know the future when making our plans. Listen again to what James says in verses 14 through 16. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast and brag. All such boasting is evil. There in that 14th verse, James points out two reasons why it is absolutely foolish for us to presume to know the future. One reason is because life's events are so unpredictable. James says there, why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. Isn't that true? We don't know what events are going to happen in our life tomorrow. Have you ever planned a cookout or some outdoor event and had to cancel the last minute because of an unexpected thunderstorm? Or have you ever planned to leave on a trip or a vacation and you had to cancel the last minute because of a sudden illness or a death in the family? You see, we don't know what life events are going to come our way. And so James says, why you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. As the old saying goes, life can turn on a dime. One telephone call, one bad test result, one accident, one careless mistake, one heart attack, one stroke, one foolish mistake. And our whole life can get turned upside down in a heartbeat, and all the things that we had planned could go right out the window. And so it's foolish to presume to know the future when making our plans because life's events are so unpredictable. Another reason it's foolish to presume to know the future is because life's end is uncertain. James says there in verse 14, what is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. You see, there is not a single one of us in this room that knows if we have 10 more years or 10 more minutes in this world. That's a sobering thought, isn't it? One of the classic illustrations of this truth is seen in Jesus' parable of the rich fool in Luke chapter 12. Listen to what he said in verses 16 through 20. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. In other words, I've come up with a plan. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. And God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Now we know that Jesus is not just giving us a hypothetical situation in that parable. What happened to that rich fool there in Luke 12 happens every single day. I couldn't help but think about all those people who have lost their lives in the rip currents off the North Carolina beaches this summer. Do you think any one of those people thought to themselves, I will never return home from this vacation? Not one of them. You see, life is uncertain. They went there planning to have a great time, enjoy a wonderful vacation, and their body was transported home in a casket. When I was ministering at First Christian Church in Mount Vernon, Indiana, we had a widow in our our church by the name of Mandel Sneck. Mandel's son, Harry, was one of our deacons in the church. One evening, Mandel called Harry and asked if he would come over and take her to the grocery to pick up a few things. Just 10 minutes after Harry hung up the phone with his mother, he arrived at his mother's house and found her dead. She hadn't been sick. She didn't have any known disease. She just simply died. Harry called me to come to the house, and when I got there, the sight was very sobering. Mandel was still sitting in her chair by the front door. She had her coat on. Her purse was open, sitting on her lap, and her left hand was held out, and spilling out of her left hand was the change that she had counted out that she was going to use when she went to the grocery. Mandel Sneck was a mist that appeared for a little while, and then she just vanished. And life's end is just as uncertain for you and me. Anything that you and I have planned beyond this present moment may or may not ever happen. In verse 15, James gets right to the very heart of this issue of making our plans. He says, instead you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. You know, from the time I was a little boy, my dad taught me this valuable lesson by his own example. Anytime my dad spoke of a plan or an appointment or an event that was beyond the present moment, he always prefaced it with these words: if it is the Lord's will, I will do that. Or the good Lord willing, I'll be there. He always prefaced it with those words. And Dad wasn't saying that to sound holy or to sound religious. He was saying it as a bold statement of his faith in God. My dad understood that all the plans we make beyond this present moment are contingent upon God's will. If it is the Lord's will, we will have Bible study Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. If it is the Lord's will, we will have our annual revival at the end of September. If it is the Lord's will, we will have our homecoming the first Sunday in October. If it is the Lord's will, we will have a Christmas cantata the Sunday before Christmas. I want to encourage you to get in the habit of practicing saying those words, if it is the Lord's will, until it becomes natural for you to say it with regards to any plans that you make beyond this present moment. I will do it, the good Lord willing. If the Lord is willing, I'll be there. Get in the habit of saying those words. Not only does that remind you that of the foolishness of planning the future, because you don't know what the future is going to hold, but it also is a powerful testimony to non-Christians of your dependence and your faith in God, that you know your life is in God's hands, and you will do this, or you will do that, or you will go here, or you will go there, if it is the Lord's will. So first, we must avoid the mistake of planning our future without God. Secondly, we must avoid the mistake of presuming to know the future when making our plans. And here's the third mistake that we need to avoid, and that is the mistake of planning to do tomorrow what should be done today. James says in verse 17, if anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. How many procrastinators we got here this evening? You know, all of us have tasks and responsibilities that we don't like to do, don't we? And isn't it easy to plan those things for tomorrow? I mean, when tomorrow comes, chances are you will do the things you want to do first, and the things that you really don't want to do, it off till tomorrow, the next day. We all have habits or attitudes that we need to work on, things that we need to change about our life. And it's real easy to plan to work on those things tomorrow. Tomorrow is always the big day we're going to start our diet. Tomorrow is always the big day we're going to start exercising. Tomorrow is always the big day we're going to start reading our Bible and spending time in prayer. Tomorrow is always that big day we're going to talk to our loved one or our friend about Christ. Tomorrow is the big day that we will call the doctor and set up that long overdue appointment. Do you suppose tomorrow was the big day that the people in Noah's day were planning to repent? Do you suppose tomorrow was that big day Samson was planning on finally dealing with his sinful passion for Philistine women? Do you suppose tomorrow was the big day King Agrippa was planning to finally become a Christian? Do you suppose tomorrow was the big day the rich young ruler was planning to put God ahead of his money? You know, we joke about procrastination as though it's just simply a weakness or a shortcoming, but God sees it much differently. In the eyes of God, procrastination is a sin of pride. James says, anyone then who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it, sins. It is the sin of proudly assuming tomorrow is going to come. It is the sin of proudly assuming that nothing is going to happen to us before tomorrow comes. And to live our lives this way is not only a big mistake. James tells us it's a sin. Outside a small town in Utah, there's a place called Dead Man's Gulch. It got its name for a reason. Many years ago, a Russian author by the name of Nabokov came to this place for a visit. And Nabokov was an avid collector of butterflies. Well, one day while he was out collecting butterflies, Nabokov heard the groaning of a man down in the gully that was formerly known as Bear Gulch. When he got back to the house from his butterfly catching adventure, Nabokov told the people that he was staying with that he had heard somebody that morning down in the gully moaning and groaning. And the people he was staying with asked him, did you go down in the valley to look? Did you go to see if there was anything you could do for the man? Nabokov said, no, my plan was to catch butterflies. And that's what I did. Well, sure enough, when the people went out to the gully, they found the lifeless body of the man that Nabokov had heard that morning. And from that day forward, Bear Gulch became known as Dead Man's Gulch, in sarcastic honor of Nabokov, the man who was so self-absorbed in his own plan that he couldn't even help a stranger in need. Like Nabokov, we sometimes get so wrapped up in our life's plans that we neglect the most important things. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't make plans, but rather that we should keep a very loose grip on our plans. Go ahead and make your plans for that upcoming trip or vacation. Go ahead and make your plans for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Go ahead and make your appointments and fill in your calendar. But always, always remember that those plans will only come to pass if it is the Lord's will. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and your plans will succeed. We're going to offer the Lord's invitation in number 372.